It is an honor to introduce our guest speaker, Dr. Stewart Hill, whose exceptional experience and dedication to Indigenous governance and environmental stewardship, combined with his long time studying and sharing of traditional knowledge, will enrich our world view understanding. Hill received a doctorate from the Natural Resources Institute of the University of Manitoba in 2021, a Doctor of Philosophy degree in Natural Resources and Environmental Management, and also holds a master degree from science from the Brandon University. Prior to entering postdoctorate studies at the U of M National Resource Institute, Stewart worked as a senior research and policy analyst for the Manitoba Keewatawani Okanagan, also known as MKO, which is a Northern Manitoba Chiefs organization. He worked there for over 5 years. Dr. Hill is from God's Lake First Nation and was born and raised in Northern Manitoba at God's Lake and speaks his Cree language fluently. His PhD thesis researched and asserted Indigenous governance over land and water and the traditional territory of his home of God's Lake First Nation. And this assertion has implications for all First Nations using Indigenous methodologies. Dr. Hill has over 35 years' experience providing research, writing, technical, and analytical services for First Nations, government academia, and non-governmental organizations in the field of natural resources, environmental, and land management. His area of special interest is traditional knowledge, or Indigenous science, that he has studied and worked with for the entire breadth of his career. His culture and identity provide the guiding philosophies in his work. Please help me welcome Dr. Stewart Hill. You're up here. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just going to use the microphone here. I have an outline which I'm going to show in one of the slides here, just so I don't miss anything. I got this hard copy as well. Your minister, Phil Reid, passed me some tobacco, in keeping with our protocols. Tobacco is the most sacred plant that exists in our culture, because that's the offering that we do to the Creator, to God, when we pray. And then, of course, you got other medicinal plants after that. Mainly, the ones in the south here would be sage, cedar, and of course, the other one is cedar, and then the sweetgrass. Yeah, so those four. But in the north, we have different plants that we use. So thank you for the tobacco. That's in keeping with the protocols, my cultural protocols. So I really appreciate that. Just to start off, my reasoning for doing this, for presenting our Indian worldview, is when I did my thesis. I began a process at some point between those 7 years that it took me to finish my PhD. At some point I realized that what I was doing was I was decolonizing my mind by thinking about how we govern our lands, how we've governed our lands for thousands of years in the God's Lake area. And I'll talk a little more about that. But then I started thinking, if I'm decolonizing my mind, what should Canadians be doing? They should be doing something too. And then I thought, well, they should be indigenizing their minds. They should be learning about us. And that, because we're all in this together, nobody's going anywhere. So we all have to live in respect and mutual recognition, and we all have to live together in peace. And part of that is going to be this process of reconciliation. So, we have to get along. I know I'm going to talk a little bit about the imbalance that exists in our relationship, and that began way in the first constitution of this country when they started building Canada, and I'll touch on those. Also, as I go through my worldview, I'm going to be making references. I'll compare it to concepts in Christianity, just so you understand the concepts that are in our worldview. And I'll just jump right into it. Next slide. So this is where God's Lake is. I usually describe it as 585 kilometers northeast of Winnipeg, as the crow flies, as they say. So that's God's Lake right there. If you could go to the Manitoba slide again. Okay, now where we are at God's Lake, that's the southern end of the subgroup of Cree known as the Ininu. The Ininu extend from James Bay at Moose Factory all along the coast up into Shamaroa, God's Lake, and then down to Norrie House, the Paw, OCN, and then northeast up to Thompson, and then up to Churchill, and then down the coast again to Moose Factory. And that's the Ininu people. That's a subgroup of the Cree tribe. To the west of Thompson, you have the Rocky Cree. And they speak the TH dialect. Us, we speak the N dialect. But the Rocky Cree are like NCN and those bands there. And then, of course, here from the west here in Winnipeg, we have the Plains Cree. And they speak I believe it's the Y dialect. The Rocky Cree call themselves Naheto, while us, we call ourselves Ininu. And then the Plains Cree, they call themselves Naheonawak. And then east of James Bay, into northern Quebec, you have the L dialect, and they call themselves the Innu. And if you put all of that together, like northern Quebec all the way to British Columbia and down into the plains, we form the largest landmass group in the world, the Cree. Plus we have relatives in the United States. So we have quite an area that we cover as the Cree tribe. But this presentation, I'm going to be relying on my culture, the Innu culture. People have different understandings of what is spirituality and what we believe, but people have different colors, different schemes, and everything like that. But it's only one. There's only one creator, one spirituality, and that's in our belief system. Okay, if we can go. Okay, and this is just a close-up of our lake. It's about, usually describe it as 20 miles wide, 60 miles long. And I spent my younger years here guiding Americans, so I know that lake really well. I did that every summer. I would work at the lodges and and guide the Americans to go fishing for the summer. And then, of course, below us is the Island Lake, Garden Hill, St. Teresa, and they're Ojibwe Cree, or Anishinaabe, I think they call themselves. So in your land acknowledgement as well, like if you want to totally acknowledge the Cree tribe, you would say Nahetuak, Nahewak, Ininwak, and Innu. So that would be the Cree tribe. Okay, next. So our lake, this is just an aerial shot of God's Lake First Nation is of course on the south side, and Mantusipi Cree Nation is at the mouth of the God's River where it leaves the lake. I grew up as a boy in God's River. It was just a settlement back then in the 70s. They didn't get their reserve land till about 1976, and then they got reserve land in 76, and in 1984 they got their reserve land. But of course, by 1979 we had moved to God's Lake First Nation. We never switched bands when they Mantusipi got like my family didn't switch band. So we've always been God's Lake First Nation, right on the south side there. And I just highlighted Knife Lake there. What we're starting to do is, what our community is starting to do is we're starting to establish cabins, camps, where, you know, we do healing practices, like for addictions, family, men's camp. The boys just got back from Edmund Lake. They went there by skidoo, went goose hunting, and now the girls will be going up next, but they'll probably go by push plane, the girls. So we do things like that. So we probably have about 20 camps starting from April to about September. And of course, September, October, we have the fall moose hunt. Okay, and then next slide. Okay, so this is the outline I'm going to follow. I'll just describe every component of our worldview. For God, Creator, our word is Mantu. It's spelled Manitou, but we say it so fast, it sounds like Mantu. So you can say that pretty easily. And where Mantu dwells, we call Kichikisagu, and that would be akin to heaven in Christianity. And in heaven, there are countless, beyond our imagination, there are countless spirits that dwell with the Creator. When the Creator wanted to form the universe and the earth, he called on the spirits to help him create his creation. And there were four spirits that came forward. First was Nutin. Nutin is air. Next was Iskuteo. Iskuteo is fire. Next was Nipi, and that's water. And then, of course, mineral and earth, the rock. So those four spirits came forward. Those are the building blocks of creation. And these spirits, they offered themselves to help the Creator create the earth and the universe. And the order of creation, there's no order of importance. They're all equal between these spirits. In the order of creation was the plants were formed first. The plants, the trees, the grass, they were all, and they have a spirit. Plants have spirit. The trees have spirit. And the gift that the plants are given is they have the ability to see into the future. And next that was created was, of course, the animals. And the gift that animals have is they're able to see into the spirit world. I don't know how many of you have dogs, but they can sense things way before you. And I have an example there. When I had a little dog when I was growing up in reserve, and I had a little dog. And one time I went snaring, and I was walking along the shoreline, and on the ice it was starting to melt a bit. And all of a sudden my dog froze. All of a sudden he started growling. And I said, "What?" There was wolves all around, like you could see the tracks. I thought he saw a wolf. But no, it wasn't a wolf. Just up the shoreline, my cousin comes out. He was checking the snares too. So my dog sensed him way before I did. That's their gift. They can see and sense things way before us. They have heightened senses. And of course, next, we were created last, the human beings. And the gift, we were given a responsibility. In place of a gift, we were given a responsibility. And that responsibility was, we have to take care of the earth. We are the caretakers of the earth. That's the responsibility that's been given to us by the Creator. And we have to really take that seriously. As you'll see in one of the legends that's coming up, you will see why that is so important, that responsibility that we have to take care of the earth. Now I want to sit down, like I usually sit down on this next part, because if you can imagine yourself sitting in a teepee, and it's midwinter, there's a long night, nights are long in the wintertime, and usually you can't really go anywhere because it's cold sometimes in the wintertime. So the elders would sit with the children and whoever was in the camp, and they would tell stories. We have 3 kinds of stories. You can look it up, Google. Look up Louis Bird. He's Mushkegowuk Legends. He's a professional storyteller. He's from Pewanak along the Hudson's Bay coast. But anyway, he says there's 3 types of stories that we tell. Achimuna are just, stories in general. Maybe I'll tell a story about yesterday. I was out with my grandkids. That's an Achimuna. I'm just telling you a story. The other kind is Tipachimuna. Tipachimuna are stories of events that taught you something, that you learned something important. Like a very significant event that taught you something about life, about survival. Example might be, I sometimes have dreams. I'm a dreamer. I have visions, according to my culture. So was my dad, my late dad. And my late dad, he kind of passed that on to me, and I'll talk a little more about that a little bit. So that would be like a Tipachimon, like the significant dream I had, a significant event. Now the last one is, it's kind of hard to explain. It's called Atanukiona. And what that word means is stories of old that have been passed down through thousands of generations. Stories of old from your great grandparents. They've been passed down through the generations. I used to say legends, but legends doesn't capture that. Legends have as if it's a superstition, or as if it's just something that was made up. But Achimona are different. Legends, but I'll use that word for now, just so you understand. But what it means is the generations that have been passed, the stories that have been passed down, reverberating through our generations, our ancestors, and we will continue to hand them down. Now, I'm going to tell you the gist of 3 legends. Our legends can fill a library. I know maybe 5 or 6, so that shows you what I know. But I like to use these 3 legends to demonstrate a point about what these Tanukiona means to our culture. Of course, when the settlers first came and they heard our stories, they said, "Oh, that's a bunch of superstition." But they had a purpose in our culture, in our worldview, and I'll show you why. In our culture, the central figure in our legends is Wisaketja. That's his name, Wisaketja. So Wisaketja, we base our stories on him, and he's half human, half spirit. Wisaketja has powers. He can change shape. He can talk with the animals. He can communicate. He has special powers because he's half human, half spirit. So anyway, the first story The first one I'll tell is Jack's walking along the forest, and then he sees a bunch of spruce hens sitting on a spruce tree. And he says to them, "What are you? What kind of birds are you? Who are you?" He says to those spruce hens. And the spruce hens say, what that means is we're birds that startle. We're birds that scare. Right? So Jack starts scoffing at them. He's scoffing at them. He's laughing at them. He says, "You're just little birds. Can't scare anything. You're just little spruce hens." So anyway, he's laughing away and he's walking, keeps walking. And he comes on a creek. And then, but to get across to the other side of the creek, he has to make a running start at it and then jump over to the other side of the creek. So off he goes, he takes off and he's going to jump over the creek. And just as he jumps, these bunch of spruce hens jump up like, and I don't know if you've ever heard spruce hens jump up like that. Very, very loud. Anyway, they startle Jack so bad, he goes splashing into the water, right, in a big white splash. When you tell it in Cree, it sounds funny. We always laugh. Yeah. Yeah. So the lesson behind that is no matter how small something is, or no matter how insignificant something may seem, always respect it. Respect those birds, respect those animals. And these legends are apparently like an hour long. The last one I'll tell you is apparently around 2 hours long. Now, just to use up the long winter nights. So the next one is, again, Jack heard that the animals were cold in the wintertime. And he said that they had no insulation, the animals. So what he did is he called up all the animals of the forest, but he had a condition. He said, you sit and you wait, because I made you a lake of fat." He made a big lake of fat, "and I'll hand you some fat so you can keep warm." And of course, all the animals complied. They were sitting patiently, waiting for their turn to get some fat. All except the rabbit. The rabbit comes running out, charging out of the forest, like full speed, and you know how fast rabbits are. And he jumped right into the lake of fat, and trying to beat everybody to that supply of fat. And of course, Jack is really mad. He's furious at the rabbit. And he said, "Get out of there, you sit and wait just like everybody else. You sit and wait patiently like everybody else." So he gets ordered out. And then Jack starts doling out, starts giving the animals their supply of fat so they can be warm. All except the rabbit. If you ever skin a rabbit, you can see he only has a little bit of fat around the waist. And that's because he made Jack mad. So Jack only gave him a little bit of fat. He only has a bit of fat along the waist. And that's true. Like if you ever skin a rabbit, of course we eat rabbits in our culture. I grew up on rabbits. But anyway, the lesson on that is that if you want something, be patient. It'll come. Be patient while you wait for that thing that you want. Creator will provide. Creator will give you what you want. And the last one, apparently this one's a very long, but elder said that these elders were from Fox Lake Cree Nation. I did a history project for them. And the elder said, "I'm just going to tell you the gist of these legends." And this one was reviewed by by another elder, and he said, I cannot believe how accurate this is, the way we wrote it out. And he said, who told you this? And I said, there was a spiritual guy. By the way, it took me 15 years of asking to know this. 15 years until somebody trusted me enough, a spiritual person, to trust me enough to tell me. Plus, every time I asked in northern Manitoba, we were so oppressed. Our culture was so oppressed. They didn't want to talk about it. And I remember being kids and we were shushed. Every time we asked something about anything spiritual from our spirituality, we were shushed. And I was wondering about that. But anyway, so Wisagajak is walking along the forest, and he had a pet wolf. And you know how dogs are. If you have a dog, then they run off, come back, run off, come back. And as Wisagajak is walking along, his wolf is doing that, running off, coming back as he's walking. Until at a certain time, his wolf doesn't come back. And he starts wondering, what happened to my wolf? So off he goes searching for his wolf. And he found that his wolf had been caught by these water cats. They're called Mishipishwuk in our language, Mishipishwuk. And they're big, giant water cats. And they were playing around with that wolf, throwing him back and forth, just playing with that wolf. So roughly that eventually they kill that wolf. And of course, Wisagajak is mad. He gets mad and he wants to avenge his wolf, his pet wolf. So he turns himself into a tree. You remember, he has powers. He turns himself into a tree and he waits for those water cats to come ashore and start sunning themselves on the rocks. And then every time they laid their heads down to sleep, those water cats, he would move closer. And he would keep doing that, keep moving closer. Every time they laid their head down, keep moving closer. Finally, he gets close enough to one of the water cats, and he kills that water cat. And then the other water cats are, like, of course, mad. They want to avenge their fallen relative there. And Wisagajak turns himself back into his human form or half-human form, and then starts running. But Wisagajak knows that the water cats have powers over the water, because they're water cats. And he knows that in their anger, they're going to flood the earth. So as he's running, he scoops up a piece of earth like this, and he slaps it onto a tree. And then he gets away eventually. He gets away from those water cats. And sure enough, just as he predicted, the land starts to flood. But he had made himself a boat, because he knew it was going to flood. So as he's floating around on the water, along comes a beaver. And the beaver offers his help. Is there any way I can help you? And Wisagajak says no. He hits the beaver. He said, I don't need your help. I don't want your help. I still don't know why he hit the beaver, but he did. But the next comes the otter. The otter comes swimming along, and he says to Wisagajak, he says, can I help you? So Wisagajak explains that he left a piece of earth on a tree down there at the bottom of the water. And he said, I'm going to tie a rope around you, see if you can go find that piece of earth. And then down goes the otter, and he waits a long, long time. And finally he pulls him up. The otter didn't make it, and drowned on the way down or on the way up, but he drowned, the otter. So again, he's drifting along, and then along comes the muskrat. The muskrat comes along, and he offers his help. Can I help you? And again, he says, he explains the situation, ties the muskrat, and he sends him down. See if he can find that piece of earth. Again, he waits a long, long time. And then he pulls up that muskrat after a long time. And the muskrat is half drowned, but he's holding that piece of earth. He found it. And that's what Wissagetjak used to form the land again. Now, when we heard that legend, we thought it was the creation story, but it's not. It's not the creation story. It's actually a recreation story. And I asked the elder. I said, what does that story represent? And what he said was that in the life of the earth, in the lifetime of the earth, it has renewed itself through tumultuous events. First was by fire. And from what I know from paleontology, there used to be a supercontinent. But that broke into several continents, North America, Europe, Australia, it broke into, and those were the volcanoes that the earth renewed itself by fire. And there's a legend about that. It involves the robin, the circle of fire, and he saves all the animals inside that circle of fire. He shoots arrows up in the sky, and then everything outside that circle is destroyed, but he saves all the animals in that circle of fire. Now, the next time the earth underwent a cleansing was by ice. And those were the ice ages that happened throughout the life of the earth. And there's a legend about that. I haven't heard it yet, but I'm certainly going to keep searching for it. There must be a legend about the ice and the ice ages that happened. And then, of course, the next time the earth underwent a cleansing, it cleansed itself, was by water. And that's that legend I just told you. Where we're sitting now, there used to be a prehistoric lake called Lake Agassiz. First was the Tyrrell Sea, and then it kind of, with the receding of the glaciers, it formed a lake, a humongous lake. It went right into the Montanas, the Great Lakes, all the way into Alberta here. Like if you fly to Vancouver, well, I love flying to Vancouver because I can see the prehistoric riverbed. I can see it. I know what it is because I know what I'm looking at. So anyway, Al Gore has a video. It's called An Inconvenient Truth. And he talks about Lake Agassiz. And he talks about, the ice dam flooding into the Atlantic Ocean. It triggers a ice age in Northern Europe. That's Al Gore that relaying this. So that event is actually in our legends. That significant event of that flooding from the glaciers, that's in our legends, like thousands of years old. Now, there's a prophecy that is associated with this. And the prophecy is, this is where our responsibility becomes important. The responsibility that the Creator gave us, our Gisemantu, He gave us that responsibility to take care of the earth. And if we fail Him or fail the Creator, the next cleansing is going to be by air. Maybe it's starting, climate change. The pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, how was that virus transmitted? By air, droplets in the air. Maybe we're starting to see that prophecy come to reality because we're failing to take care of our Mother Earth. So that's the significance of our legends. Like if you hear just one legend and you don't understand it and you don't know the culture, you're going to shoot it down right away because you don't understand it. But if you understand it, where it fits in the grand scheme of things, in your culture, we have cultural insight. When we hear those stories, we know where it fits in our list here. We know where it fits. So that's my storytelling part. And then I'll just continue on with the list. Okay, so those were Atanukiuna, commonly referred to as legends, but legends doesn't capture it. Now, the four components of the human being is, of course, we have a spirit, Ashjak, we say in our language. Uyasun, that's our physical body. Mitehiwan, our heart, our emotions. And Mamitinentamun, our ability to think, our brain. That's the four parts of the human being. And can you go to the next slide? This is a basic model of what they commonly referred to as the medicine wheel. In the center of our lives is the Creator. And of course, the way we relate to the earth is, of course, the four directions: east, south, west, north. And the spirit sits to the east, and it represents when we come out into the world as a baby. That's our babyhood there on the east. On the south, we do a lot of physical growth. As children, we do a lot of physical growth. So that's the physical dimension. And then, of course, from a child and then adolescence, we grow into adults. And then we start experiencing these complex emotions. So as adults, we learn to manage the complexity of those emotions. And then, of course, once we grow out of adulthood, we become elders. And the reason the mental is represented on that dimension there is because as elders we have journeyed through life, so we've gained wisdom by journeying through life. So that's the medicine wheel, and it's very, very versatile. The information that's in that circle there, this is only the basic one. There's animals that are represented there, there's colors, there's all kinds of things in there. And this is forever. You can't learn it all. The best we can do is learn all we can in our lifetime and then pass it on to our children. Because you can cut this up in so many ways. You can represent it in so many ways. And I spent 7 years studying this. And where I got that thing is that we exist in infinity. You know, this is not where the life ends. We will journey on a spirit into the spirit world. So where I got that infinity thing was from, I was watching a video of an elder from Norway House, and he was sitting in front of rock paintings. And he was pointing to them, and he said, these paintings, we don't know who drew these, but they go right into the rock. They're forever, he said. So I took that concept of forever, or infinity, or eternity, and then I applied it to this medicine wheel. And you can draw the same conclusion. Or at least I drew the same conclusion, that, you know, that we exist in infinity. What really blew my mind was another book I read was by Betty Eadie, Embraced by the Light. He says, it's not just infinity. He says, it's infinities. Whoa, I had a hard time grasping infinity, but infinities? Whoa. That just my mind just went haywire. Okay, if you can go back to the other slide. Okay, so I'll just keep following this. So that's the medicine wheel, the circular frame. So in our life, in our culture, we have what we call teachings. We are born with honesty, love, kindness, and sharing. Later on, we're taught humility, truth, and caring. But, you know, it might differ from culture to culture. But the point is that these values are virtuous. You know why they're virtuous? Because we have to try and mimic our Creator, our Mantu, our Ksemantu. We have to try and mimic our Creator, our Savior, the Trinity, however you believe. You have to try and mirror. That's why these teachings are really important, because they connect us to our Creator. For me, it's my Ksemantu. For you, it could be God, it could be Creator, however you believe. But those are the teachings. And in our culture, what a baby we call uskoasis, or the new being. Oasis, of course, the child. Kistieao is the adulthood. And then Kestiao is the elder. Those are the stages of life that we acknowledge in our culture. Now, the roles of life and learning and teachings in a new societal structure. If you can imagine a circle, the center circle is the child, the children. The next circle is the elders. The elders teach the children. The next circle is the women. The women take care of the elders and the children. And way on the outside of that circle are the men. They provide and then they offer protection way on the outside. And I'll just make a point here. You can imagine when the government came and took our children between 3 and 5 years old. They were the center of our societies, our children. When they came and took our children, our societies collapsed. They imploded. And all those negative things that you hear about now, high alcoholism rates, high jail rates, high alcoholism rates, high addictions, all those things are as a result of that. Our societies collapsed. They imploded. And then we're still trying to recover from it. So that's the importance of, we know what our structure is. We know what our societies are. We understand them. So those are the roles in life. So the elders teach their children. The women take care of the elders and children, and then of course all those. And each stage of life has a bundle, a sacred bundle. The men have a bundle, women have a bundle, elders have a bundle, children have a bundle. And as the boys go through on their spirit quest, and they find their nitutem, because we say, but in English they say totem. But the word is nitutem. Nitutem means my relative. Let's say I go on a quest, and then I find in my vision, my totem is my nitutem is the bear and the wolf, because I had a dream about them. And an elder interpreted those for me. My late friend, Gary Raven, he has a book as well, Gary Raven. So those, as the boys go through their physical quest, they join the men way on the outside. And then the boys get taught by the men their role in the society, their role in the group. And the girls, when they have their first moon time, they go through, they have a berry feast. They call it the berry feast. And all the aunties and the mothers and the grannies, they encircle that girl. And they honor her with a berry feast. And then after that, the girls join the women. The women show them their roles as women, like in the group. So those circles are constantly moving. They're not static, they're constantly moving. And for men, I think it takes about 25 years to learn how to be a man. 25 years, not 18 like today's society. No, for us it was 25 years, around 25 years. That's when you're considered a fully functional, responsible human being. It might have been earlier for the girls, but for us men, I know it's about 25 years. And then the next part, and again, this is in Louis Bird's book, the senses. We have the 5 basic senses: smell, touch, hearing, taste, smell, sight. Those 5 senses. But Louis Bird says our ancestors, our Indian ancestors, they developed 4 other senses. One was they were able to sense danger. They were so healthy that they could sense danger. If a bear was nearby, they could sense it. Other is they could sense direction: east, south, west, north. They had that ability. And also, you can sense distress, or let's say your close relative is lonely for you. You'll sense it. Munenta mun, we say. You'll sense it in your being. Your relative is lonely for you, wants to see you. And you don't have all of these, but for me, my dad passed on dreams and visions. Like I pay attention to my dreams because I've had too many significant dreams not to listen to them. Not all of them are significant, but some of them, once in a blue moon, you'll get a really powerful dream. And it signifies something, but you won't know what you dreamt about until it happens. And an elder told me that too. He said, you won't know until it happens. Either that vision or that dream you had. I'll tell you something when I lost my mom a few years ago. I was still doing my PhD studies, and I got a call as I was sitting down at the university. And my mom was at the Southeast Personal Care Home. So I rushed over there, but I was too late. She was gone, but she had dementia. She wouldn't have known me anyway. But her spirit had left. But anyway, months prior to that, I kept thinking about this wooden cross that my mom used to have. And I always wondered, where is it? Where is that cross? So that's why I was thinking about that cross. It was because my mom was going. And I didn't know until it happened that me thinking about that cross, that wooden cross, was because my mom was going. And another one I had was my brother-in-law back up north, back home. He was a Christian, evangelical, I think. But anyway, he got in trouble, and he committed suicide by hanging. months before that, I kept feeling this noose around my neck. It wasn't really a noose, but I felt something on my neck. And it was really hard, like solid. And that was my brother-in-law. I sensed him already that he was going to be going, and he hung himself. So those are two examples. Another one I'll share with you is to sense danger. I remember I said I used to guide in God's Lake. Well, anyway, my cousin used to guide with me. So anyway, one time he was telling me, it was right in the middle of the lake. And he said he saw some smoke on the water. And he said, I knew right away somebody was in trouble. So he told his Americans, reel up your hooks. And sure enough, they went around the island there. They found a stranded family, young family. They had run out of gas. So he shared his gas with them, and then so they could make it home. But anyway, the Americans, I guess, asked him, how did you know? How did you know somebody was in trouble? And my cousin, of course, said, I don't know. I just knew. So these things are real. These are not superstition. These are real. In our culture, they are real. I sometimes wonder if other cultures have these things. But that's just me. Anyway, so our people were so healthy, like I said, and then they were part of the environment. We had a direct relationship with the environment. And like any culture in the world, we were masters of our environment. We mastered the boreal forest. We knew the life cycles of the animals. We knew where to get food. We knew all the dangers of it. And we had a lot of respect for it. Like any culture, we were masters of our environment. And the knowledge that we have, we passed it on. Ever since, once a child can understand from babyhood, that first year was, for a boy, it was really significant. They had a walking out ceremony for that little boy. That was the first time he's allowed to touch the earth after 1 year. And they would make little snowshoes, or they might hold an axe. They're going to take their place in the earth, in the world, in the life of their people. So things like that, that knowledge transmission. Everybody had general knowledge of medicines and the environment. Me, I'm just starting to learn in the past few years. I know how to pick huiques, which is rat root. I make cedar tea. I hear cedar is also good for arthritis. Red willow is aspirin. It's a painkiller, and I use that as well. Labrador tea cleans out your stomach. You know, it must get sticky in there, so you drink a lot of Labrador tea, you clean it out. You clean out your gut with Labrador tea. And there's two types of Labrador tea. One is we call Muskego pago, which is the plant, muskeg plant. And then the other one is Gagage pago, or the forever leaves, because they remain green. Like they don't change color. They're all green, always green. So the forever leaves, that's basically what it means. So we had general knowledge of the medicines and the environment. And then of course we had higher forms of spirituality and its instruments. And these were our medicine people. What Mitewano means is, you'll recognize it, I said it before, Mitehe Inu. Mitehe Ininu, the good-hearted one, the gifted one. That is Mitewano. These were our high priests. These were our doctors. Now, the way colonization unfolded was they used these things because some of our people practice spiritism, but that there's a fine line between spiritism and spirituality. Spirituality is good. Spiritism can be bad, really bad. And spiritism exists everywhere in the world, not just our culture. I could go to London, I could go to Paris, I'll find spiritism. I can go to Africa, anywhere, I'll find spiritism. It's not just us. It's exercised by all human beings, anywhere in the world, or can be. But spirituality is something else. Spirituality is about Kisemanitu, our Creator. Our Creator is very loving and kind. Like it's a very, very, very noble and very virtuous, our Creator. And survival was an overall goal. Bimachahun means, I used to say survival, but if you break down the word, Bimachahun, Bimich Tipimatisi, which means as you live your life, as you walk through this life, that's what Bimachahun means, and how you live that life. And the things we do, survival is part of it, yes. The way we teach our children, that's part of it. But it's not all of it. It's only part of it. Our lives are very complex. You know, we learn to try and walk in a good way. That's why we're given those teachings, so we can try and emulate our Creator. And then the overall goal is, of course, Minupimatsun. Minupimatsun means the good life. Everybody deserves a good life. Doesn't matter who you are. Everybody deserves a good life. Everybody deserves a chance to achieve that good life. And that's what Minupimatsun means, the good life. And now we tie it back. Let's tie it back to our Creator. In our culture, our Creator is the one that holds our Constitution. The highest law that we know is held by our Creator, our Kisemantu. And it's only one word, respect. Respect has to guide everything. The way we relate to each other, the way we relate to animals, the air we breathe, our sight, our smell, our senses, everything, we have to respect it. And we show respect for each other as human beings. So that's how it loops back to, in that great circle. And that's pretty well all of it, but I want to just throw in a couple of, just to show you how it compares to modern systems. Could you go to, yeah, right there. So this is how our knowledge is organized. One night I couldn't sleep. I didn't fall asleep till 4 in the morning, and this is what I came up with. Connecting spirituality and the medicine wheel. I knew there had to be a connection, and this is how it connects. And the thing with this is that it demonstrates cultural insight. You know, scientists say our knowledge is unorganized, but they only say that because it doesn't fit their work plans. But if you look at it through indigenous eyes, our knowledge is highly organized. It's right there. Okay, next slide. And the way Canada manages our lands, they have laws, legislation, policy. They carry out the laws and the regulations. And then, of course, regulations to ensure that the law is obeyed. Like if you break the law, you go to jail or you pay a fine. So how does that, this is like comparing apples and oranges. They're very different. But generally, this is how they compare. Our law, we followed natural laws. One natural law is that Creator put all the resources in this earth so that we can survive through our own effort and our own sweat. And I believe that's in Genesis, in the Bible as well. But we knew this long before the settlers came. Rules of conduct, spiritual practices, like we respected animal remains. I remember when I was a boy, my parents would send me off to an island, or they would send me deep in the bush to go throw out the remains of animals, like usually marten or mink and all that. And I always wondered, why are they making me do this? Why don't they just throw it in the garbage dump? They were showing respect to those animals by not dirtying them in the garbage dump. So those kind of rules of conduct and practices, we had those. And beliefs and spiritual consequences made sure that we followed the laws. One concept is ghostinan. If you do something bad and you break the law, for example, you torture an animal, the big no-no, you do not torture an animal. You do not torture a bird. If you do, you're going to pay for it. Not only you, but your family, your relatives. I don't know about you, but I don't want that on my head. Another one, kind of the opposite again, balance and opposite. If you do good, then good will come to you. If you're kind, kindness will come to you. So those, and there's lots of them. These are just two opposites I use to demonstrate that. Okay, next one. So to summarize it, science-based system is based on numbers and intervention in the natural environment. For us, it's based on need and availability and conforms to the natural environment. And these are not always compatible, but I believe there's ways that you can. The way I usually say it is, if you look at an apple and you look at an orange, you can find commonalities between them. They're both fruit. They're both citrus. They're both good sources of vitamin C. You cut them up, mix them up, they make a pretty good fruit salad. So there's ways that we can work together as going forward and making reconciliation. And I think that was it. I just wanted to throw these in. Next one. Oh, yeah. The box, this is what's for my thesis. The box represents us within the Indian Act, within the legal framework of Canada. But we're much more than that. Our existence is so much greater than that box. Okay, next one. And this is just, we put together the two concepts in my thesis, which is the medicine wheel and, of course, the cycle of what we're going through in reconciliation. And this was part of an article we did on a journal. Okay, next one. And this one here is part of my, I couldn't figure out how to articulate our relationship to Creator, our relationship to water, our relationship to land, our relationship to birds, animals, and the earth. So what I did was I went to Fort White and I sat beside the water, Lake Devonian, I think they call it. So I sat there about maybe 20 minutes, half an hour. And then I started looking at the geese, started looking at the sky, started looking at the grass around me. And then started thinking about the air I'm breathing. And then I thought about Creator and how He made things so perfect. And you know what? By the time I left that spot, I go there all the time. That's my favorite spot. It's kind of out of the way, but I sneak in there. But anyway, this is what I came up with. NIPI, as creation is sacred. Uh, we are responsible for taking care of that. We have water as part of creation, enables us to survive. And of course, water enables the health and well-being of us as human beings. So that's what I came up with. That, and of course, spiritual world, physical world, ecosystem world, human world. So 20 minutes to half an hour, I sat by the water, and this is what I came up with. And I think that's my last slide, so thank you for listening. Oh yeah, I can take questions if you want. Or you can share some thoughts.
So, thank you again so much, Dr. Hill. I had hoped Chris Wells was going to kind of moderate the Q&A portion here and help out with that. But he's doing civic duty and helping out. He had to go to an election poll thing to help out with training there for that. So I apologize that Chris is someone that I'd love for you to connect with. I don't know if you got a chance to talk with him a bit, but Dr. Wells, he got his PhD on being a white Englishman trying to come to terms and understanding what it means to be that here in Canada, and looking to be indigenized. And I like that word. And so do you have any questions that I can yes, Lisa. Sorry, if you could just repeat that again.
Okay. So how did my culture influence my research and my writing? Oh, the process. Okay. Well, first of all, I wanted to use the medicine wheel to kind of structure my thesis. But the University of Manitoba has regulations. So I had to follow that introduction, literature review and all that. So it's already set out in regulations. So I couldn't change that. So what I did was I brought in the medicine wheel as a theoretical framework, and then I also incorporated it as a conceptual framework. And the method that I used was called autoethnography, which is what they call a three-group method. One was autobiography, my experiences living in a colonial world. And second one is, of course, ethnography, which I just showed you here. And then, of course, graphies, writing and analysis part of it. So the method, the medicine wheel was incorporated into as a theoretical framework and a conceptual framework, and I showed you some of those. And then, of course, the autoethnography approach. So the other thing too is that I was able to what I call uncloaking the colonial knowledge. And what I realized was that from the time I entered kindergarten at 5 years old, and I didn't speak a word of English, 5 years old, right up to my probably late 30s, 40s, everything that I've been taught is colonial. So what I said was, okay, I'm going to put that aside. And I'm going to think like an Innu. And I found that so empowering. It was like a 180. In my brain just went 180. Because I realized that our Aboriginal rights from the Creator have not been dealt with fully in the Constitution of Canada. Everything is questionable. Even the treaties that we signed those have only been interpreted from a colonial lens. They've never been interpreted from our lens. And I'll tell you a quick story about I interviewed my 92-year-old uncle in Oxford House. And he qualified his story by saying, you know, I overlapped with those men that were at the treaty signing, he said. And he said, I know they told the truth, what they told me. So by extension, I know he told the truth. And by extension, know that I am telling the truth. I guess what Commissioner Simmons did when he convinced the people of Oxford House to sign the treaty was he took 2 blades of grass and he stood them up on the ground. He broke one of them. And he said, do you see this broken blade of grass? Those are the half-breeds. They're not going to grow because they have no treaty with the Crown. But do you see this full blade of grass? That's you. You're going to continue to grow because you have a treaty with the Crown. Now, I read Simmons' report in the archives. Not once does he mention that. What would the people have understood? To me, by saying that I would continue to grow as that full blade of grass, to me that's a promise that I will prosper. He's promising us prosperity. And that prosperity has never materialized for us. As a matter of fact, in 1867, with the first Constitution, they put Section 9125 in there, or 2425. And they made themselves responsible for Indians and lands reserved for Indians, making us wards of the state, making us dependents on Canada. And that dependence you see today with the reserve system. And then, of course, the Indian Act is still in force and effect today, including that first Constitution, is in force and effect as I speak. That first Indian Act is in force and effect as I speak. 1930, they transferred the resources to the provinces without talking to us, their treaty partners. And then 1982, they repatriated the Constitution. 1982, I think I was under Trudeau, Trudeau Senior. And then you got Section 35 there now. But we haven't defined those Aboriginal and treaty rights. We've defined First Nations, Inuit, and Métis, but we haven't defined what those rights entail. So it flows from that, all that stuff you're talking about, and then you kind of have to take it from there, from your culture, and then kind of move through that ethnography, you know, and that paints a really, really good picture where you stand. Yeah.
Any more? Yeah, sorry. I guess I should. Yeah. If you're able to come, so we don't have to repeat the question. If you're not able, I'll try to repeat it.
Thank you very much for your presentation. And you talked about the sharing the legends, which there was the other word that I can't remember it and wouldn't. Anyway, so now nowadays, in a society where you aren't gathering in teepees anymore at night on a cold winter night, and living in a colonized society, are you finding other ways to share those legends with the next generation?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's actually one of the challenges we face in our healing processes, our healing journeys, is that we have to figure out how do we gap that, how do we overcome that gap between the youth and the elders. They have different thoughts, thought processes and that. But one of the ways that I've seen it is using technology. You know, I think they're starting to build games now, video games, basing them on legends. Like those legends I told you, I always think, maybe we should put them into video games and just keep building them up. You know, and I think that's possible using technology, because our kids nowadays are so tech savvy. You know, our grandkids and our children, that technology is their world. But the other thing that's happening is, I mentioned those camps that we have. We're starting to bring together the youth and the elders. And the other thing too is that there's more language programming. Bill C-92, I think, was the language legislation that was passed a few years ago. But we're seeing governments now pouring millions of dollars into language programming. I think they gave the Métis, or the Michif language, 21 million. They've only given a few million to First Nations so far, but you know, that's one thing. I'm involved with a committee where, you know, we're going to be working on establishing our own institution in the north, Thompson, like a language institution. You know, I might see the purchase of it, I might see the development of it, but you know, there's young people that are coming up. They're getting more and more educated. Plus, they're getting very assertive in their language, in their culture. You know, you see it on the news. You know, they're marching, they're doing all kinds of things. I'm not a marcher, me, but I'm more of a thinker, as you can tell.
Amy, you had one. Oh, Nelson, I can bring it to you. I think so close.
Check.
Well, I usually say, Kiitina Pintsedegason. That's my traditional name. And for his Christian name, Nelson Hart. And I'm more or less interested in what you talked about, legends, different stories, and the main thing about is historical things. How did we get here? But I heard what my great-grandmother's sister was saying, that she said, we came about this area 10,000 years ago. That was the theory of what you were talking about, Western descent. But we still don't know, at least in my knowledge, that we can come from Europe or Asia or whatever. But we're all here somewhere. But according to the legends, we have meanings and knowledge of why this and that. But like I said, 10,000 years ago. But there are stories that I heard from elders. There are stories that they knew at about 20,000 years ago, before the Ice Age. But the thing is, so language is it varies in different areas. Like for Stewart Hill, it's more Swampy Cree. Up north, in our area, we speak a TH dialect. And more or less TH is, we live in a rocky area. And then they call us Asinskaldinyo, the Rocky people. But, treaties came, Christianity came, but we always had those before. For creation stories, inventing the flood, everything else. And all of the things that you read in the Bible, you heard them from the elders. Their understanding about creation, they heard about. And then the important thing about that is their dreams. Dreams were important for individual. And when I go to the elders and I talk to him, do you ever have a dream? Well, with all this thing that's going on, we didn't know that we had a dream. So sometimes in a dream, you hear different stories about. In the dreams, you fight those animals or other humans became. And then I had a wrestling match with this giant or something. And then I beat him. And all of a sudden I seen from the lake shore, I seen some men come up. And one of them said, "Oh, this is the first time anybody was able to put this person down, but these, I guess, the spirits came. You keep step aside. We'll look after this until the police come." So I look at these people, but they were rocks. And they can't come from the soil. But that thing, like I said, when you have dreams, you don't know what that dreams were about. You didn't understand the wording that when you have a troubles with whatever, there's something that helps you. Like for me, it's the rocks. And then it's more or less something that you realize. I didn't know that. And like what the Western science is saying, like when I was out of high school, we didn't have much to do on the reserve. And my mother said, "Why don't you go and visit the elder here, Thomas? You might learn something." So I went to this person, and he told me about everything that he knew. The hereditary system of the governance of the land, and then all the land was very sacred. In Nelson House, they used to have what it's called the footprints on the rock, and they had another little car. It looks like a canoe. And then when we were traveling, we find out who made these rocks. And they always say, "Wisagitak." Stop on these rocks. And a boat, and this one is a boat. Mimi Wishiuk. It's another tribe of people, but they live in the rocks. But in according to the legends, the stories that you hear, the Mimi Wishiuk went out and to do some fishing at night. Well, we don't know, and sometimes you hear something and it moves in the water, and then and they say that's Mimi Wishiuk. That people have seen these, well, people say little people, or some other, but for some people I heard say that they're hunting, and then you heard a shot, and you look around, what's that noise? Here was a little person. Mimi Wishiuk. He's trying to do some hunting for himself. And then they have the Mimi Wishiuk. You can go to the sweat lodge, which I did, and I experienced the sweat lodge. They do these ceremonies. And you can hear that the Mimi Wishiuk talking to you. Or say to a friend, say, I took some, say, a can or a few like sardines or any stuff like that, and put them in the rock. And this is a bag that's there, and that's offering. And then you hear these spirits in the sweat lodge saying, we thank you for offering us.
I was wondering if we should have Dr. Hill maybe tell us about, respond to some of the things you've said.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, yeah, Nelson, I remember him now. I used to come to God's Lake all the time. Yeah, Nelson, yeah. Many years ago. I recognize you now. I didn't see you sitting there. I used to come to God's Lake all the time. Many years ago when I was growing up in God's Lake. Yeah, Mimi Wishiuk, I've heard of them. They're little people. And I heard that they like shiny coins and jelly beans. So if you want to leave something for the Mimi Wishiuk, take some jelly beans and some maybe a few coins. They'll appreciate it, and they'll bless you in some way. Yeah, I've heard of a lot of the legends. I even heard of one or two people back home because our terrain is so rocky. They live in the rocks, they say. And there's a lake between Island Lake and God's Lake. It's called Fairy Rock Lake. And what the story behind that is, I guess there was a trapper. They were paddling around a corner, and they startled these little people in their little canoe. They were checking their net. Those little people, and then they chased them. By paddling, they chased them. But they went right into the rock. Those little people, they paddled right into the rock. And they went up to that rock and he started banging on the rock. And it's a solid rock. But they went in there somehow. But yeah, that's those are very good stories. The legends of the little people. I'm sure there's more. Like I'm just learning too. Just learning from my culture and what I just showed you here is a way of life. Like you live it every day. You don't just do it one day. It's a way of life. And I'll probably be learning till I take my last breath on this earth. But then I want to pass some of it on to my children and grandchildren. And I'm happy I shared with you guys too. Now you understand a bit about how we look at the world, you know. Yeah.
Now, Amy, is your question, do you, because maybe we should just let Dr. Hill enjoy his day, but you can try to accost him on the way back if you got your own personal questions that you'd like to bring to him. My head is a swirling, and I've got a bunch of things, so you'll probably get emails from me. If we could just applaud Dr. Hill, and thank you so much. And sorry, I can't clap because I'm holding the microphone. And I want to thank Pam for making this connection. Pam saw Dr. Hill at a municipal meeting, and that's where that connection was made. And so I'm so grateful for Pam. And one of the questions that we'll bug Dr. Hill offline about, but just how some of that indigenizing can work both in the church and in civil politics. But we'll that's for another time. So thank you everyone for coming. God bless.